So here we are, Winnie the Pooh cup in hand and ready for another Sunday morning. Well, it's not quite Sunday morning, just about to go to midday actually, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. Now, one of the things you will have noticed is the T1 hasn't made it into the studio. And it hasn't, you're right. It's still here. Now, there were a couple of reasons why it hasn't made it into the studio. First of all, I'm still trying to work out how to include it into my rig because it was a bit of an impulse purchase, I have to be honest. But I don't regret purchasing it one iota. The second reason I haven't put it into the studio this week yet is because, to be honest, I wanted to find out exactly what was wrong with the keyboard itself. And that's taken a while. I mean, it took a while to get into the keyboard because never working on a T1, whereas with a lot of the keyboards, so there's my M1, I've been able to studio and pick that up this morning. But whereas with the M1, you enter the keyboard from the bottom and everything is effectively sort of bolted bottom in, if you like. So you take the bottom plate off and then you work your way into the keyboard. The T1's not like that. What the T1 has is effectively has a solid piece of, it's not MDF, it's like an MDF, I suppose, board at the bottom, which is like a baseboard. And then everything is built up from that. So all the master circuitry in this thing is actually on rails within the board. So it actually makes it incredibly easy to work on. I have to be honest, so when I actually did eventually get into it, I was quite surprised at actually how easy it is and how much space there is in there for you to be able to do things. So the power board is up this end, the motherboard is here, the memory expansion board is next to it, the aftertouch board is over here, and then mounted onto this piece at the front here is all the touch buttons and user interface boards. So, but it did take me a while to get into it because I couldn't work out where it was being secured. It looked like the front wanted to hinge up, and in fact the front does hinge up. That's exactly how it works. But it was trying to work out where it was secured from underneath. A little bit of trial and error, got there eventually. So yeah, it was. So I've got inside it, and I've also given it a good looking over. And it's in pretty good nick actually, so well done Nigel, it is actually fairly operational. As far as I can see, all the combi banks, the sound engine, the outputs, they all seem to be working perfectly. There doesn't seem to be any issue with the actual sound of the unit. So, I don't know whether that comes across okay because I'm using my lapel mic. But it is it's that sort of classic 80s, 90s sort of sound to it. Now, the biggest problem with this keyboard is the actual interface itself, so the buttons. Now, it's sort of difficult to explain, but I'll try and explain what's going on. So, in keyboards, you either have, or typically, in most keyboards that I've ever come across, you typically have two types of button contact. The Roland keyboards use a like a rubber membrane with a carbon graphite dob button on the bottom of the membrane, so that when you press the membrane effectively deforms. That's exactly how it works, and the graphite carbon button on the bottom of that key makes contact with the circuit board and bridges the contact between two graphite contacts, and that's how the button works. So when you press the button, it makes contact, completes the circuit, the keyboard knows you press that button. And a lot of Roland keyboards, or the older Roland keyboards, I've not really got, I've not taken any of the newer stuff to pieces, to be honest, because I haven't needed to. But a lot of the older stuff is that way inclined, is this sort of rubber membrane contact scenario. Korg however, and I think some Yamaha stuff as well, they don't use that. They effectively have sitting underneath, definitely on the M1 and definitely on the T series, they have a circuit board, and on the circuit board you have a reed switch or a little contact switch, which when depressed goes click. Okay, and that is what makes the contact. So there's no actual physical contact between completing a circuit that way. It's actually the switch closing and opening is what makes the contact on the keyboard. And the way they do that, just moving something out of the way. The way they do that is effectively this is a key from inside the T1. So as you can see, that's the bit that will be poking through, and this is actually a broken key. That's the bit that will be poking through, and then this side tab here, there you go. That bit there makes the contact with the switch. So effectively, when you press the button down like that, and it's hinged here, it does that. Okay, and that's making contact with the switch. And it's Korg are notorious for those switches to fail after a period of time. It's one of the common problems. So two common problems are the switch breaks. So inside the keyboard there is another piece of this, which is where it would have attached to, which would have been there. Okay, so that's one issue. It breaks, right? The keys break. And the second issue is the actual contact switch itself eventually gives up the ghost. Okay, and typically what happens is overzealous people bash and bash and bash and bash and bash and bash, and eventually they just give up. And it is a common problem. So what I did this morning was I went over and picked this up. Ooh, dum, 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 dum. And I don't know whether you can hear this. I put my mic up. Can you hear that clicking noise? Okay, so that's exactly the sort of style of arrangement that's on the T series, which is not surprising given that T series was immediately after the M series. But when those switches go, that's it, they stop. So what I did earlier in the week is I took this to pieces. I took the board that sits behind all this off, and then and I'm not recommending doing this, but if you know what you're doing, I effectively shorted the switches, because what I was trying to work out is whether it was the switch that was broken or whether there was a crack in the circuit board. Okay, the circuit board seems to be fine, it just seems to be the switch that's broken. So I've ordered a whole bunch of new switches from America, because they're the only place I seem to be able to get them, and they should be here in a week or so with a bit of luck, so I'll be able to repair those. I've also ordered a number of these, because I'm sure I'm going to break some more of these as I repair it, and I'll then put those in. The other thing I've done is, and you can't really see it on here, but the typical Korg display on one of these and on the M1 is that sort of green grey background, sort of a dirty green, I suppose is the easiest way to say, or you know, that sort of colour of the sea when it's sort of a little bit further out. It's sort of that background with black LED, not LED, but LCD lettering. Now, the problem with those is if the backlight goes, they become very, very difficult to actually read. Okay, and the backlight on this has gone. So what I've decided to do is, rather than faff around and put a new backlight, I'm just going to put a new display in. So again, I've ordered one of those as well, which will come. This is the new display I've ordered is the blue background with white writing on. And the reason why I've gone for that display is because it's far easier to read, especially if you're in a low light scenario environment. Now, I never expect to have to go and gig this. It's too old to gig, to be honest. But when I'm sitting playing, like from this angle here, that's difficult to read, whereas a blue on, a white on blue would be far easier to read at that angle, and that's probably the angle I'm going to play at. So that's where we are. Now, going through exactly what is broken on here, so I've said the switches are broken, so that does restrict my ability to actually use the keyboard in some ways. Now, When I got the keyboard was stuck in transport. It was transposed 2 semitones down. So effectively, middle C was on D. Is that 2 semitones down? 2 semitones up. 2 semitones up. So C was on D, which is a bit of a pain. So what I did was, when I had the board open, I short-circuited the relevant switch, and I've now got it back down so that C is now on C, which is really good and really helpful. But it does mean I can't transpose this. So going through everything that's working. So I've gone through every key on the keyboard. And they all seem to be working. And also the aftertouch seems to be working, so that's good, because that's something I don't have to replace. The master volume has no scratching on it, which is also good, although I'm going to give it a damn good clean with contact cleaner. The value button, which is this button here, which you can't really see on this video, works fine. But where the issues come on some of the other keys. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to do one more thing, and then I will move the camera into the keyboard so you can actually see the overlay of the keyboard and what I'm doing. And then, you know, we'll call it quits, I think. The other thing that happened this week, which was rather unexpected, if I'm brutally honest, I'm just covering up somebody's name, was a friend of mine said, "Do you fancy Elton John tickets?" Elton John tickets! Hey! So, those of you who see this on a regular basis know that I love keyboard players. Elton John and Billy Joel, in my mind, are two fantastic singer-songwriters. Elton John obviously has this unique partnership with Benny, and Billy Joel. And then you've got fantastic keyboard players. So he's a fantastic singer-songwriter, fantastic keyboard players, Rick Wakeman, Keith Palmer, Jordan Rudess, you know, various people like that. Anyway, yeah, do I fancy Elton John tickets? So next Saturday, I'm going to see Elton John. Hey, result! Anyway, I'll move the camera now. So I've moved the camera so you can actually see the keyboard, so you can see what I'm doing, because obviously when you're looking at me, you can't see what I'm doing on the keyboard. So, as I said, it's got a really great sound to it. I love this keyboard already. These are just stock sounds. But one of the things I have noticed is that the up buttons, so that doesn't work, but I can go down. Okay, so it's going down okay. Bit sticky, but there's a bit of a echo there, but it does go down, but it won't go up. Okay, so that switch is broken. And similarly on the cursor here, the up doesn't work and the down does seem to work, so need to be careful on that. And then going and looking at these entry buttons. So the entry buttons are these ones here, and they dictate which one of these you're working on. Now again, I'm not sure whether that's coming across on camera, but only about 2 of those are actually working, so I suspect, and I've been underneath the circuit board and I've shorted them, and I know that it's actually the switch that's gone, not the board, so that's good. And neither the page plus or minus work on here, so again that's a switch issue. And if you come across, and if I just move the camera like that, okay, so you're now looking at the sort of the guts of the combi's working. Program A, as you can see, nothing there. But program B does work. Comes straight into one world. Which of course is the replacement for universe. And what did I find the other day which I was looking at? It's got some really pipe organ. Can't go back to that, unfortunately. I'm just trying to find out. I found one the other day which I thought was absolutely brilliant. Oops. Anyway, you get the picture there. So I can go down, but I can't go up. Sequencer, there's nothing loaded in the sequencer, but it is working. So there we go. Although I don't think the button is working itself. So we go back to combi. E-program and E-combi are obviously for cards, which is sort of the same as it's the same controls as the M1, if I'm brutally honest. Where the M1 calls it edit combi and edit program. Obviously they can't get the word edit in there. The global menu works. Unfortunately, this is where I had the problem, because transpose is off the H key and I couldn't get across to that to actually put the transpose back, so I short-circuited the switch to allow me to do that until the new switch arrives. And then, as you can see, this is where the missing switch comes from. It's there, and it actually goes in that way around like so. And the actual reed switches are along the bottom here. And it's a slightly different design to the M1, whereas the M1 has the concept of you just dial in the number effectively. On here, they're the tens and they're the units. So let me go back to, and some of these are working, like so, and some of these aren't. So I can go 9, 9 for argument's sake, and it'll take me up to the top. And 8's not working, 7's not working, 6 is not working. But 0 is, so I can go 0, 9. I do like the drum on this, actually, I have to be honest. I think this is the bass. Nice, solid 80s, 70s rock bass drum there. And then I can scroll down a bit further. Not with that, I can't. Yeah. So when I bought the keyboard, the guy who sold me the keyboard very nicely sold me all the discs with it. So this one here is the factory reset. Very handy disc to have. And then there was a whole raft of other discs, and these look like, a lot of them look like the Korg disc set. I think there was about 10 discs they did for the Korg, if I remember correctly, and there seems to be a number of them in here, so that's quite good. Sound effects, fine. Unfortunately, what I can't do is I can't use the disk drive on the keyboard at the moment, and the reason for that is actually very simple. I don't think the disk drive is broken. However, in order to load, so I go back to here. In order to load sounds from disk, I need to go into the global menu, and I can select load. However, because I think it's the B or C key is the appropriate button to press to actually instigate the load, and because that switch is not working, I can't load stuff into it at the moment. But once the switch is replaced, then that should be fine. Failing that, if I'm brutally honest, the floppy disk drive on these is just a standard 1.44 meg computer drive, I believe. So I can just go and pick one of those up from a second-hand computer store and should be able to get it to work. Just make sure it's black, not cream. But there you go. I'm going to reposition the camera again now. So let me just move this down a bit, way like that, so you can see the keyboard. So what I'm thinking at the moment is another reason why I haven't put this back into the studio, apart from the fact I want to repair it and put it in the studio, is I quite like the size of this keyboard. Now, a lot of people have said it's bloody big, and you're right, it is big. I mean, it's full 88 keys, and if I stand upright, and as I said, I'm 6 foot tall, which is about 180 centimeters in new money, and this thing comes up to my chin. Okay, so that means it's probably around sort of 150 centimeter, 1.50 m in height, and I'm sort of quite comfortable with that because I like it. I've now got 3 keyboards which I use as masters. The Crony is an 88 key keyboard, which I use all the time, and I've got an RD, a Roland RD, which is an 88. Unfortunately, that is in storage at the moment. I haven't had that out of storage for quite a while. But I do like my 88 key keyboards. I also like the weighting on an 88 key keyboard. My fingers need the weighting. They need the practice in terms of the being able to play a real piano keyboard. So that's the reason why I like it. And this has a nice weight to it. It's a nice feel keyboard. It really is. But what I do like about this is that there is, I mean, I know I've got things on it at the moment, but effectively, if I'm writing or I'm working on something, then what I've got is space actually on the keyboard to have either sheet music, yes, I still use sheet music, to have sheet music, or to have my laptop, or as I've got it set up at the moment, I've got my little mini Boss mixer in here, just making it work. It also gives me somewhere to put the speakers, which I quite like, although I'm probably going to get stands. Now, what I am thinking of doing is actually leaving this in my house, not moving it back to the studio. And I think get another set of speakers for it and then use this for when I'm at home rather than when I'm in the studio. So there you go. That's my thinking. Because you have all this nice space, and yes, all right, it's fake wood, it's not real wood, but it still does look a nice piece of furniture. The other thing I'm considering at the moment is I'm actually thinking about getting the end cheeks taken off it. Now, they're a bit bad. They're not in too bad a condition. You know, the thing about this keyboard, it's not in too bad a condition. It was a very good find. Nigel, who was the guy who had this before me, looks like he's looked after it. You know, so that's fair enough. And it is 27 years old. So 28 years old, 27 years old. So it's got a degree of history to it. And you know, in our modern society nowadays, as I've said on many occasions, we're a bit of a throwaway society, and you know, these things, you know, apart from the fact they're just absolutely ace, and they still make a fantastic. The way they construct sound is still fantastic. I mean, you know, the sound that comes off this would still compete with a lot of modern day synths, if I'm honest. And you know, why not? Yet, you know, at the end of the day, this costs me a damn sight less than a modern day synth equivalent. So, you know, think about, what does an 88 key Kronos cost? I know because I've bought one. I've got an 88 key weighted keyboard for a fraction of the cost. All right, I've got to put a couple of £100 into it to probably get it back up to its form of glory. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's a beautiful keyboard. It really is a beautiful keyboard. And then what I was saying about the end cheeks is that what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to go down to a local carpenter's, local joiners, take the end cheeks off, and then give them to the joiners and ask them to make me a component set, probably with real wood ends, so hardwood ends. I think that would really just set this keyboard off, if I'm brutally honest. So, you know, you'd have the black of this and then the hardwood ends, and also it would just sort of tidy up the ends. That's where I think I'm going anyway. Now, I was going to do a piece about the Korg M1, but I'm going to shut up actually. So I'm not going to do a piece about the M1. Anyway, I think I've rabbited away for enough. It is Sunday morning. I do want to play this thing. Now I've got it working and I've now got the transpose off. It sounded gorgeous with the transpose on, but it's a bit funny if you're trying to play stuff and it just doesn't sound quite right. C'est la vie. Anyway, I'll catch you lot next week. Take care. Bye-bye. I've been told it helps the channel out greatly if you hit the like button if you enjoyed the contents of this video. If you want to be notified about future videos that may be made for the channel, please hit the subscribe button.